Hello, my name is Anoa Changa.
The Way with Anoa. The Way with Anoa.
To metro area. Actually, my kids actually went back last week. I know it's crazy, right? It's summer's still going on and the kids are already back in school. Actually, my boss's kids went back the last week of July. It just seems like they have the kids going back earlier and earlier, trying to, finagle that year-round school schedule some one way or another. So I hope you guys are doing well. We are in the 8th month of the year. Been kicking it with you guys for about 5 months now. This is pretty wild. Been hanging out with the Benjamin Dixon Show. Shout out to Benjamin Dixon and the rest of the Progressive Army, and our senior producer, David Grossman, who is manning the controls backstage, so to speak. So there are a lot of changes going on. It's pretty exciting. You know, if you haven't seen by now, I have a website, thewaywithanoa.com. You can pick up my episodes. If you don't catch me on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., you can catch them the replays on either the Benjamin Dixon Show channel. I have my own YouTube channel, The Way with Anoa. Also, thewaywithanoa.com not only has, this is what's pretty awesome, not only has my Tuesday night episodes, but it also has other podcast episodes that I started doing. The Way with Anoa is now on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Player FM. And that hosting is brought to you by Podcast Revolution. You may have seen some stuff about Podcast Revolution. We did our massive collaboration for DNC convention coverage. Our fearless leader, Michael Salomon, over at Podcast Revolution, shout out to them. This is all independent media. We are people who work and try to bring you great content in our free time, spare time, because making sure that you have good information, good content, some entertainment, chuckles every once in a while. I mean, that's really important to us, and we hope you appreciate it. And if you can show some appreciation, I finally have my own Patreon account because a sister needs a new computer. We've come a long way from the computer freezing during my rants back in the late winter, early spring. But my dinosaur computer is still hurting here. So please check out, I think David or someone will drop the Patreon link in the chat room. Please check out, I think it's just patreon.com/thewayofanoa. $1, $2, $3, $5, help me help you. You know what I'm saying? I give you good content, you hook me up with $1. I mean, so there's a lot going on. Please like and subscribe on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, thewaywithanoa.com. You just have to get a little self-promotion in there. I really am not great at it, but this is how we grow. This is how we help build out our teams. If you are interested in doing research, if you have production skills, we can always use your help. Shoot me an email, thewaywithanoa.com. See, I got so many The Way with Anoas. thewaywithanoa@gmail.com. You can also hit up our senior producer, David Grossman. I think it's david@progressivearmy.com. So we're looking for your talent, if you want to get more involved, come check us out on Facebook. The Progressive Army has a great discussion group. Share articles, share your thoughts, share ideas. Who knows? We may feature something that you have shared with us on one of our shows, right? Shout out to Nick, because Nick has started doing his own regular content. Nick did a bunch of those specials originally, but now he has the Takedown. I love it. I think that I might even kind of help come up with that, but look at me taking credit for other people's work. Sound like anybody we know? So there's a lot going on, and I don't have much time because, right after me comes the big boss man, my big brother, Benjamin Dixon. And Ben and I often talk about a lot of the same things anyway. So if I don't get to something, I'm pretty sure he will. So one thing I I wanted to talk about, which has nothing to do with politics, because you know sometimes I go off the rocker sometimes. I'm very excited because two wonderful things happen next month in September that have to do with the city of Atlanta. All of it has to do with music. We have one music fest. Yes, I'm an old head. So the idea of Busta Rhymes and the Dungeon Family and Erykah Badu all in one place. Yeah, we got the new people like ASAP Ferg, you know, holla at ASAP, ASAP Worldwide, ASAP. No? Okay. Well, anyway, so it's really exciting because this is something for the whole family. I think that my kids are just as excited to see Erykah Badu and Busta Rhymes as me and Craig are. So that's going to be pretty cool. And then also next month is the debut. September is the debut of Atlanta. Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino's new show. Basically, you know, it's somewhat autobiographical of his life here in Atlanta. Donald Glover, Childish Gambino. If you haven't heard his raps, then you've probably seen his work. He was a writer for 30 Rock. I believe he did writing on Community. He was in Community, but I also think he did writing for Community. He's pretty awesome. And I'm not even pretending like I'm the hugest, you know, Childish Gambino fan. That's actually my 15-year-old daughter. My daughter is actually the one who put me on to Childish Gambino, got him on my Spotify and stuff. You know, she comes in and she'll download the music and stuff. So I know there's so much seriousness going on. Why are you talking about rappers and concerts? Because sometimes we have to take a step away. It's okay for have momentary breaks from all the seriousness, all the movement, all the action. Like it's okay for us to breathe and do something enjoyable. It's okay to have hobbies. It's okay to have interests. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to spend time with your family, right? We talk a lot about self-care and self-love and all that other great stuff. But we never like really take a moment to indulge ourselves, right? You know, so to make sure you take some time because we playing the long game. We phase 2, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, the primary, that was the warm up that got it. We made the introductions, met the family, got it together. Now we're forging ahead, right? We're figuring out kind of where our different niches are, who's going to play in what position, right? We're working it all out. And so, but we can't lose sight of the moments where it's okay to unwind. It's okay to let your hair down, kick your shoes off. You can kick it. You know what I'm saying? I'm excited. I got so much energy. I got to go back to Zumba for the first time in 2 years this past weekend. I love Zumba. That's a whole nother topic and story. But you know, we really got to make sure we take time. We can't be so consumed, right, with the righteous path and with making sure we fight the good fight that we lose out on the meaningful opportunities to enjoy our family, to enjoy our loved ones, to enjoy that good music that you missed so much because you were so busy planning meetings, running rallies, getting out the vote and everything else y'all been doing, crisscross the country. Do y'all know how amazing you are? Like y'all are fabulous. And yeah, like because of you, the last several years, I mean, you think about all the different movements that have happened over the last several years, and the fact that people are even talking about things like BDS, the fact that Occupy came on the scene and people started talking about, you know, Wall Street reform, the fact that Black Lives Matter exist and we have organizations like Sankofa and the Justice League who are actively engaged on these issues that are so important to our communities every single day. This is because we have amazing people who stand up and decide to take a stand. We have amazing people who say enough is enough and these issues matter. It's not because of some politician. It's not because no matter how righteous or down or wonderful we think they are, politicians don't drive change. They listen to the will of the people. They listen to the pressure that's put on them when people are calling their offices, when people got signs in front of their meetings and rallies and stuff. You do this. I said this the other day and I had some people push back a little bit. You know, pushback don't bother Anoa. I just push back even harder. Y'all better watch out now before I start singing the song from Steven Universe. But no, seriously, like greatness has never been achieved by falling in line with the status quo. I'm paraphrasing my own self there. But greatness does not come from standing in line with the status quo. Now, that's not a dig at anyone that has decided that it is their job or their moral duty to support Hillary Clinton in her upcoming, presidential campaign. That's not a dig at anyone. I don't believe in telling anybody how to vote. How you vote is how you vote. That is your right. My ancestors died for me to have the right to vote as I see fit. And I'm going to do that. And I suggest everybody do that. But just as I don't want you telling me who I'm supposed to vote for, what I'm supposed to do with my vote, I won't do that to anybody else. I will respect at least that much. You know, I got friends who support Donald Trump. You know, and they have their own very good reasons, and I know at least one is willing to talk with me about her viewpoints. But I do think that regardless of what we're doing, we need to stay the course. You know, so there's so much that has happened today in particular, right? There's always so much that happens. I feel lucky to have Tuesday nights sometimes. You know, when we had to decide who got Tuesday versus Thursday, or how we were doing this. I mean, sometimes I feel like I lucked up getting Tuesday. I knew I couldn't do Monday nights, but Tuesday I feel like is a good night because there's a lot. I'm not too far away from the weekend. There's a lot that's been going on. You know, shout out to folks organizing in Chicago and in Philly and Baltimore and down here in Atlanta. I mean, Houston. People are all over the place. You know, in Chicago last week, I know many people have already seen the video that came out from CPD. There was a piece from, I believe it's the Tribune, did a piece about how pretty much out of all these different civil rights investigations, all these DOJ investigations over, I believe it's a 10 or 15 year period, there have been no actual charges brought against Chicago police officers arising out of those incidences. You did have charges come several years back against John Burge, but they were for perjury, I believe. I believe it was for perjury or obstruction of justice. It wasn't actually arising from any of the particular incidents themselves. So we have this issue. We continue to talk about how we have, you know, the rise of Trump and we got to defeat Trump. And I do actually have phones tonight. See, I'm a little, you know, I got started a little late. So I was like, I got so much to get in with you guys. So I do actually have phones. So if anybody wants to chime in, you want to call, you want to, you know, speak your mind, share your words a little bit, hit me up and let me know what's going on. Just let me know, you know, just want to hear from you. 678-810-0089. See, I'm so big time now. I even have my own number. Isn't that great? It's like pretty awesome. Anyway, so just thinking about just the things that have been going on. So we've had all these issues already, like Black Lives Matter has kind of solidified as a force, right? The organization, you know, other organizations that organize and utilize the umbrella. We have the Movement for Black Lives release a beautiful platform, very thorough, very coherent and cohesive. I mean, it's detailed, it's magnificent, right? But this is an issue that goes back to, you know, slavery for the most part. The treatment of the supposed U.S. justice system, U.S. legal system of Black bodies in spaces, whether it is, you know, criminal spaces. I mean, the criminalization of Black life has existed from the inception of this country and before. We also have today, so getting to the point of today, why is today important? Today has been 2 years since the murder, since the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson. It's been 2 years since Ferguson revolted. It's been 2 years since the sheer injustice in Ferguson was dragged into the national spotlight. And that conversation has been driven by several different voices. But we have seen so many other incidences, right? We have so many other names that are now being held up. And there's so many more that never even make it to our mainstream news. And yet you would think 2 years since, like, I remember that summer, right? I remember that August, we had just moved to Atlanta. I remember sitting on the couch watching it unfold with my father. My father was probably the same age as my son was when, you know, the summer 66, summer 67, summer 68 happened, right? Things happen in cycles. And how do we work on not just elevating this movement moment, as some people call it, this current cycle of awareness, of action? How do we leverage this into meaningful and sustainable change going forward? So by the time we have another cycle, another upswing in activity, we haven't lost ground, right? We're just building on what we've already done. Because I really feel like in many ways we've lost ground since the 60s. We've lost ground since people have litigated these battles before. Because 2 years since the passing of Michael Brown, 2 years since Darren Wilson, took his life. And we know, I mean, people can make all the rationalizations, justifications they want to for why Darren Wilson had to do what he did. However, we do know that the likelihood of you being disarmed, taken alive increases if you're white. I mean, we have so many examples of white people who will point guns at police officers, who will try to take police officers' guns, who will fight them, who do all something, and they get arrested. We have a caller. Hello, caller. How are you this evening? Give me your name and number. Well, not number, but give me your name and where you're coming from and your question or comment.
My name is Wakiri Sana, and I'm calling from Decatur, Georgia.
Okay, so what's your, I'm going to tell everybody up front, this is my mama. So what is your question or comment? I'm not even going to pretend that that's my mama.
Okay.
And I love the fact that my mom and my dad and my grandparents, they all watch the show too. So, hey mom, what's your question or comment?
My comment is that when you talk about leveraging and how can we go forward, and you talk a lot on your show about local organization or local organizing. One of the things that I think that we can really do to help is to invest in already existing organizations, such as the black banks. You see the big thing that happened with the black banks when people were, went and invested their money in black banks. The same thing is, I think, for other institutions that we have, as well as building institutions, but support the ones that do exist. There are lots and lots of organizations out there that are doing things to help our people, to alleviate a lot of the oppression and a lot of the problems that we have, from community patrolling, with police, organized actions to help us. So you came to my school today. You saw Quilombo.
I did come to your school today. It was fabulous. The kids did a wonderful chant and first thing in the morning. I mean, you guys have rituals. You have just so much that uplifts the kids and drives them to motivate and be. Colombo Academic and Cultural Institution is a independent African
good
center
about themselves
here in the Atlanta metro area.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was saying, yeah, it was a great experience this morning, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other institutions, not just Quilombo, but there are other institutions that are accredited. We all state standards. We have won different awards, throughout the city, science fairs, things of that nature. So we're rigorous, but the thing that makes us stand out is that we're culturally relevant. You have to teach children the world through their own eyes, and that makes a big difference. They're taking African and African American history out of the schools, So what does that do for our children? They don't see themselves in the curriculum and the things that they're learning, So anyway, I just want to say that, I really appreciate what you are doing on your show and Benjamin Dixon Show. You're very grassroots. I love what you do, and I love you.
Well, she has to say that because she's my mama, but she wouldn't have called in if she didn't believe it. So I appreciate you, Mom. Thank you.
You're welcome, baby. I love you.
Love you too, Mommy.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. So that was my mom, and I'll share the information because my parents drop knowledge all the time. Like I've said before, I grew up in a very radical, Black conscious, movement oriented household. I kind of rejected it a little bit because I got really tired of us living like paupers as kids because my parents were so busy out there trying to save the community and organize the block. But as I've gotten older, definitely it has drawn me back in. But going to the point my mom was making and tying it into, as we look at what the past 2 years since Michael Brown's killing and what really, I think, awakened the consciousness of so many. Not that people haven't already been active and involved in these issues. I remember protests. I remember people organizing when I was in college in Ohio, when there were all the shootings in over the Rhine area in Cincinnati. We had a couple of incidences in Columbus as well, like in the early 2000s. But I really feel like it's just a synergy, right? David Cobb talked about it last week. David Cobb moved to a Men in the Green Party, talked about it when he was on the show last week. And several people have said this too, right? I believe Dr. Goddess, if you ever follow Dr. Goddess on Twitter, she's really awesome. I think she has maybe tweeted or said something similar. We're in a movement moment, right? And there's a synergy right now, and it's just coalescing. And it's different movements. You know, we got climate change action going on. You know, people who are against fracking. We have the Wall Street reformers and Black Lives Matter, which kind of encompasses all of that. We have so much going on right now, and we can't just wait until the right time to advocate for change. We can't just sit in our hands and play nice because the Republicans are evil and Donald Trump is the devil. Like, we can't do that. You know, we can't delay progress. We can't delay opportunity. We cannot delay, you know, action from our communities, from our people, because, oh my God, this boogeyman, which is completely the establishment's creation of their own. You don't like Donald Trump? Stop putting him on TV for free. Donald Trump has spent no money. And see, I don't even like talking about Donald Trump, but he has spent no damn money on advertising. Why? Because everybody and their mama, from the so-called liberal media to the conservative media, covers him for free. All of his antics, nonstop. He gets more airtime than their own candidate. Why does that make any sense at all? And do you know what people tell me? Like, when I talk to people who support him, there are people, they believe the media just makes it up. Because you know how people distorted stuff about Bernie, or that he didn't get coverage or whatever, or they tried to sandbag him? People believe that that's what they do to Donald Trump. They believe they take things that he says out of context. So this is backfiring. So getting back to what I was talking about, you know, Michael Brown, and looking like, where have we been? We still have, like, the Department of Justice is releasing a report tomorrow about Baltimore. You know, we had the report that came out about Ferguson and all the inequities and the issues and the racism. I mean, we have blatant issues across the country. We talk about systemic racism. Hillary Clinton gives these brave talks about systemic racism. He uses all the right buzzwords. Democrats use all the right buzzwords for all these issues. And they're supposed to be the better party. They're supposed to be our allies. They're supposed to be our natural, you know, protectors from the system. And yet we have a system that has been created over hundreds of years that is ultimately maintained by not only white supremacy, but by people who are Black and Latino and of other, you know, races and persuasions, who help uphold the system because they get their one little place. Tokenism is not just some random concept that people, you know, when people talk about the token on the board or whatever. No, it's a very real phenomenon. You have people who participate in upholding white hegemonic structures and white patriarchal power, even though they are not white themselves. Women participate in patriarchal structures and uphold it because, you know, people have different ideas of diversity. You know, we look at people like Neera Tanden, who will tweet about, well, the left used to want to fight fascism. Yeah, you know, the left I grew up also ended the Cold War and, like, fought against manipulating and fear mongering. So we see all these issues and we have all these things being raised, and we have the language of movements being bastardized, so to speak, being manipulated to support these neoliberal agendas to uphold these systems of power that exist to keep most of us down. So when we look at 2 years since Ferguson, 2 years since the killing of Michael Brown, we look at the Baltimore report that is coming out from the DOJ. There was an article today about it that comes out tomorrow that talks about the system and pattern of practice of disproportionate use of force, searches and seizures, and other actions, unconstitutional behaviors of the Baltimore Police Department, primarily against poor and Black citizens of Baltimore, which at many junctures are synonymous with each other. We have issues, and we have issues we have issues with our school systems where we look at communities that are the most disenfranchised, have Democratic, you know, whether they're Democratic held city councils, county commissions, state legislatures. We have districts, right? When you look at the districts of the Congressional Black Caucus members, how are they faring? What's going on with our education systems? So we talk about Republicans are bad. Well, Democrats only work to help maintain the status quo in the system as it exists. They're not trying to improve anything. Now, you can find Democrats here and there that are trying to do good things and do work, but as a whole, they're so busy trying to maintain power against the really bad guys that all the rest of us just get traded out and you know, we get dumped out. They dump the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we look at what has happened in the past 2 years, and you would think that with all these different eye-opening examples, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, John Crawford. I mean, there's so many examples. You go back a little bit further. You have Jordan Davis. You have Trayvon Martin. I mean, there's so many examples, there's so many names, there's so many people, Black, Latino, Native American. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? You would think we would have moved the needle further on dealing with, patterns and practices of abuse that actually exist. All these consent decrees they come up with, and people want the federal government to step in. You do realize that the federal government standard in these cases is a lot higher than what can be done at the state and local level. There was a piece that came out from one of the Minnesota papers in Minneapolis. They've actually changed to some extent. They've changed their excessive force policy. And one of the things they're saying now is that if you're a cop and you witness excessive force, unreasonable force, I forget what the exact language is, happening during an arrest, you are required to intervene. If you see something that's happening that you felt was inappropriate or whatever, you're required to report it. Now, how that will actually work in practice, but there are things administratively that can be done on the local level. That can be done. There are things that can be done with state officials. But instead, in the 2 years since Michael Brown's killing, we have seen an uptick in this push for Blue Lives Matter laws. We need to continue to stay outside the system. We don't need to have our movements co-opted and taken within the party, within the system, not anybody's party. I don't advocate for any party. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't support whoever you're going to support. I know when I say things like that, a lot of people get their backs up like, oh my God, you're not going to go green. No, I'm not here to save, create, help, support any party. When we talk about issues, we talk about policy, it requires all of us to work together to achieve these goals and aims across our communities, regardless of whatever party allegiance you decide you're picking or building up. I do think there are people who do need to be a part of parties and help build them up and give them the structure and support and vitality that they need to thrive and survive in this system. However, I do think that there are those of us who need to be objective and stay outside of party affiliations and alignments to make sure issues actually get addressed. Something like Black Lives Matter should not be co-opted by the Democrats, by anyone. And that's what we see happening. We have seen over this primary season, particularly with this whole creation of the Mothers of the Movement, which is something that was created by, Her Highness and not the movement itself, right? Like, in the 2 years since the passing of Michael Brown, we have seen this become a political issue to kind of toy around with, but we have not seen any real movement in terms of legislation. We haven't seen any real movement in terms of local, actual bills, passage, citizens. We've seen some incremental stuff. We have right now in Chicago, right? We have at Homan Square. You have the takeover of Homan Square right now. That is directly linked to the outgrowth of what happened after Michael Brown was killed. I mean, so we need to continue developing our movements. We need to continue putting that time and energy in, and we need to continue giving life to these issues, giving life to what would otherwise fall by the wayside, but for you and I and social media and our brothers and sisters on the ground who are doing the work that some of us wish we could be a part of, but cannot for other reasons. I mean, seriously. So as we move forward, as we reflect on today, as we reflect on, it's sad that we have to reflect on the day somebody was murdered, right? Like, when can we get to a point? And I'm never going to say, I'm not that naive to think that there's never a situation where something happens that it's possible that it could be justified. However, there are so many cases where it's very questionable, where it's just blatantly wrong. When you're high-fiving and stomping on people's bodies instead of getting them medical attention, that's the other thing. They talked about providing in Minnesota and Minneapolis. They talked about providing medical attention too. That is one thing that just drives me nuts. They will call the unit. Oh, we have a caller. Caller, you are on the air. Your name and where you're calling from. Any question?
Hi, my name is Steve in Washington. I love your show.
Thank you.
Not going to try and miss it at all. So it's a great show. Thank you. I don't want to take us too off topic. I was hoping I could make a comment about Corona Games.
Okay.
I just have been considering how the body cameras were magically kind of off at the moment that the whole incident happened. And I've just been thinking about how we've seen Michael Brown and Laquan McDonald and mysterious behavior from police in Sandra Bland's case. And how every time there's a situation where cops screw up intentionally or unintentionally, that there's been police reports to cover it up. And I just really wonder, like, I hear people defending the police, even within the movement, saying, well, she shot at them. But I think we need to be very skeptical about that report. Unless I've missed something in the news, or unless I missed something that there actually was a case where she shot at them. I haven't heard that, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I just get very skeptical when I hear that, and I think we need to all be skeptical about what the police say happened in that situation. So that's all.
Well, I appreciate you calling in, and that's an excellent point. I'm actually pretty skeptical on the news, which is why Ben and myself and Tim Black and the same progressive, and you have, I know people are taking a little issue with TYT, but I mean, that's why you have so many Yvette Carnell with Breaking Brown. That's why you have so many of us who are trying to do what we're doing to go through the information. And when you guys send us tips and information and links and articles, that's really helpful. I just wanted to let everybody know who does do that. So thank you. But no, I think that's a really good point about being skeptical, because it does seem like the police already have it down. Like, oh, like we already saw with Corinne's case that the facts that they initially said kind of fell apart. Right. They even alleged that she shot her own son. Right. And then it came out. Then they were like, oh, yeah, well, we probably shot him. I mean, I think with it's not off topic. It's absolutely relevant as we talk about Michael Brown. Like, it's not that you can't defend police, but at the same time, when you have people like I don't really understand this concept of defending the police as if somehow police are this endangered species, right? Like when you are not accountable, when you do not hold yourself accountable, when you're not being held accountable, when you have basically a blank check to do anything and whatever you do, like if you don't discipline your kids, if you just let your kids run around, they're going to tear your house down. They're not going to, if they're not held accountable, if they're not going to be responsible, they're just going to do whatever. They're going to destroy your property. They're going to tear it down. They're going to sit around, watch TV and eat up all the ice cream. I mean, they're not going to be disciplined. They're not going to act in a productive and positive manner at all. And so this conversation about that has shifted. And that's what I think over the last 2 years, as we've let mainstream narratives, as we let political campaigns start to kind of dictate and come in. And this gets to a point that I made earlier, even about Bernie Sanders. Our revolution, just shifting a little bit because I'm running out of time. Our revolution has been kicked off August 24th. Bernie wants people to do the same thing basically you did last summer for him. Hold launch parties, to get ready to move forward. I do have confirmation for everyone who is wondering. Money raised by our revolution is to support progressive candidates and other initiatives and policy issues. It is not to go to the DNC. It is not going to Hillary Clinton. Our revolution funding is going back into the movement that has been created, and that was verified by a supporter who contacted the campaign to find out more, because I know a lot of people have been skeptical about that. And I know he had said he wouldn't fundraise for her, but people were still skeptical and wanted to actually know. So we have received an email to verify that is not happening. Like the money is not going to anybody like that. He's working against her by trying to elect Tim Canova, right? I saw that Hillary was actually in Florida today, speaking on behalf of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So, they trying to protect their girl. And when people get all upset, like, oh, look, okay, they're doubling down to protect the establishment. The establishment is doing what it got to do, and we got to do what we need to do. Okay. So my advice to everybody, regardless of what your issues are that you are really passionate about, that you want to drive. Yes. Hello. Hi. Caller, Hi. You're on the air. Name and where are you calling from?
This is Umar from Brooklyn.
Hi, Umar. How are you?
Hi, Anoa. I'm so glad that you have your website and you have your Patreon.
I'm working on it, brother. I'm working
good.
On it.
And you're putting it out there now. It's now set. Don't forget to set your social network links on your YouTube account.
I will,
including your website address.
So what you got going on tonight?
Okay, I wanted to comment on, listen, I don't know what to say about the Black Lives Matter, because after the shooting of the young lady last week with the child, and listening to everybody's back and forth on it, I was like almost too through with everything. I'm like, geez, how bad does it have to get? Now, 5-year-old children, and and people with their, well, she shouldn't have done this, or she shouldn't have had the child, or maybe she was using the child as a shield. Like, okay, stop. It's a traffic violation. It's a ticket. You don't send a SWAT team in for a ticket. And then now you've got Facebook with a pattern, it looks like, of taking down videos.
Yeah, actually, there's a really good piece out of The Root I think earlier this week or late last week by attorney Chuck Hobbs about not just the unconstitutionality possibly of maybe, I think Chuck did the Facebook one too, talking about whether or not, actually that might have been an ACLU lawyer. I'm getting all my fabulous lawyers mixed up. But anyway, there are two really good pieces just to touch on what you just said real quickly. One from, I believe it's an ACLU lawyer actually, about whether or not social media sites should get in the habit of censoring people's feeds at police demand. And then the other one is by Chuck Hobbs about whether the police acted within, her constitutional rights or violated her constitutional rights during that whole process at all. So those were really good points. And I'm running out of time, so I'm sorry we had to cut you a little short. Just got a link dropped. Group sues for Department of Homeland Security ICE records on immigrants' arrests. The Southern Poverty Law is suing for release of records on how and why Central American immigrants were arrested. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a phenomenal civil rights group here in the States, of course, there are serious questions about whether ICE agents' conduct during these raids violate the Constitution. We cannot allow ICE, the nation's largest law enforcement agency, to avoid accountability and violate the federal law by withholding these records. Lisa Graybill, the center's deputy legal director, said in a statement. This kind of gets into what I was saying earlier about how we need, even if you're a part of organizations and groups or parties or whatever, we need to support grassroots organizing, grassroots movements. We need people to stay outside of these entities and be organized, independent grassroots watchdogs, so to speak, right? Because we're really scared about Trump and everybody has to get along and get in line for Trump. But at the same time, we have massive deportations, potentially unconstitutional deportations and other actions happening under a Democratic administration. Our Democratic nominee herself, up until she got pushed, several months ago, was all for deporting children. So please, like this whole notion that I don't want my family deported because Trump might become president. Honey, your family might become deported because Democrats deport people too. They just might be a little nicer about it when they come talk to you at voting time. I mean, really, that's the difference. It's style over substance right now, right? Trump is a monster in his disposition, but substantively, there are several things that he's really not that different from Democrats on, or he's even a little bit more left on. And that's something that we definitely take him to task, but at the same time, we need to stop living in la la land, acting as if somehow we're just so much better on this side of the voting block. Like, we're not. We uphold structures, we uphold systems of power, and we allow people to tell us, okay, you just got to vote this time, and then we'll get it in the next term. We'll work on it in the next go round. And a good point, shout out to my sis, Dr. Q Hyde. The Oregon Bundy standoff wasn't censored when it was live streamed on social media. And there was actually a post I saw recently comparing, Clive and Bundy's standoff and his son's standoff. But him and his son and the sovereign citizen movement, there are so many people out there trying to paint them as patriots. And yet you have, Corinne, she's crazy. And not that I'm supporting or justifying sovereign citizens, but I think in the way that we allow things to be characterized, it does really become very racial, and how we allow media to characterize, to justify why things happen the way they do. And so as we move forward, as we talk about exercising our vote, as we talk about doing what needs to be done, we need to really be honest with ourselves, because whoever you're supporting, you need to make sure that you are being a critical thinker. You need to be holding people accountable. It doesn't matter how great their platform is. And y'all have seen me take the Green Party and ask questions. I'm a challenge and I'm going to push back because that's who I am and that's how I was raised. Nobody is perfect. Bernie wasn't perfect. I mean, as we move forward with our revolution and all these other initiatives, sign up and host a house party if you're so moved. August 24th, donate. I mean, you got brand new Congress still on the tour scene. There's so many different opportunities going on. There's still a whole list of Bernie-crats running as well. we need to hold people accountable. We also need to take stock, look back over the last 15, 16 months to see what worked well and what did not work at all. Because continuing to yell about election fraud only ignores a lot of structural and other issues that will continue to plague our movements and opportunities going forward. We have to be able to take stock. We have to be able to assess and do so without ego or getting feelings all involved and upset. We need to be able to evaluate, organize, and then mobilize. Seriously, that's what we need to do. So I need to wrap it up. Sorry for the little technical glitch. We got a little late started. Benjamin Dixon Show is coming behind me. But what I'm going to do for y'all, because I still did not get to my segment on privileged voters. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to record a segment on the podcast and drop that tonight as well to talk about privileged voters. And I'm not a privileged voter. I do have privileges in my life. A lot of people have privileges in their life. But refusing to vote for Hillary Clinton does not make me privileged. It is the systems that continue to insist that we give the Democrats our vote, and particularly black voters. We are expected to be the standard bearers of the Democratic Party without any concession. We get nothing policy-wise in return. Just the threat of the fear that those people over there are going to put us back in shackles. Those people over there might send us back to Africa. Those people over there might do this other long list of things. And it's bad stuff that's already happened. We already have massive issues with housing discrimination, poor education, lack of healthcare opportunities. So many things happen, and they happen even with the acquiescence of our good Democrats, right? In the Baltimore, just real quickly, in the Baltimore report I referred to, they reference mid-90s policies and changes as affecting the issues with police today. Who was president in the mid-90s? Come on now. Y'all know we cannot continue to allow Democrats to browbeat us into upholding their systems of power, their own personal positions, and we get nothing in return. We have the same industry, the same institutions that will lead us down to the slaughtering pit will write these reports about the state of Black America. Yeah, I'm talking about the National Urban League. We'll talk about how we need to have a new Marshall Plan, a new deal for the Black community, but nobody is putting that on the table in terms of negotiating for the vote. Everybody else will come with their demands, but we don't do it. So I'm out, but I'm gonna drop that extra segment for you tonight. Peace.